I'm Liz Faublis, and this is Currents. Religious persecution exploding around the world. Tonight, some disturbing numbers and a special look inside Syria, where religion is at the heart of the civil war. The Pope's peace pilgrimage to the Middle East. What are the lasting effects? Into the Deep with Bishop DiMarzio.
He was intent on doing it. Two reasons. First, he wanted to sign the post-synodal document on the church in the Middle East, and then he wanted to be with the Lebanese people.
And the clown princes of basketball, with a very serious message for all young people.
Bullying is a big thing going on in schools this day and age, and we want to help prevent it.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. It is supposed to be a day of love in Pakistan. Instead, more riots and death. At least 17 people are dead in Pakistan as tens of thousands took over the streets after the government called for today to be a day of love. In Lebanon, Iraq, Sri Lanka, in most parts of the Muslim world, thousands upon thousands are rioting today against the West, pouring into the streets after Friday prayers. As we are reporting so often, religious violence and persecution are on the rise worldwide. Now, some new numbers. The persecution of Christians is happening in 111 countries. That's the most, according to Pew Research. Muslims are harassed in 90 countries, Jews in 68. The worst places, Egypt, Indonesia, and Russia. And in Syria, the violent civil war is closely connected to religion. Now, CNN's Nick Robertson takes us to a Christian community for a look at the mighty forces at work.
Two iconic figures tower over the mountain village of Malula. One is Jesus Christ, the other Syria's President Bashar al-Assad. Both look down on streets near deserted in this mostly Christian community.
We used to have a lot of tourists, but now, since last year, we never had any.
War is killing this Christian cafe owner's dreams. 3 years ago, she left Miami to return to her roots. Instead of a steady income, she lives on a diet of fears, fed in part by state TV images depicting radical Islamist attacks on Christians.
For now, in our area here, it's fine, but what I heard in Aleppo, they killing and they destroying many of church and very, very old church.
Across Syria, there are an estimated 2 million Christians, close to 10% of the population. They are one of the largest minorities in this diverse country. If the opposition are to overthrow Assad quickly, they'll need their support. Maria Sadeh is a newly elected Christian MP. She doesn't criticize Assad, but wants change by talking, not fighting.
For me, I am not elected as one of any party in Syria, which is good in this situation. I'm independent and also a woman and Christian. So I'm in the middle who can take the trust from this side and this side.
As the uprising began, Assad garnered Christian support, playing on fears that without him, no one will protect them. Today, opposition offers to end fighting if Assad steps down ring hollow for Christians fearful radical Islamists are swelling rebel ranks.
But we can't ask the government to stop if we have a terrorism in our land.
But they're saying if you remove the president, then they'll stop. So maybe...
It's why? Why, if we remove the president, they will stop? Why?
That's what they say.
No, they say, but who is they?
It is a question on every Christian's mind. What would an opposition government mean for them?
After the President Bashar, we don't know. We don't know what happened, what will happen after him. What? Bad, right, so.
In Malula, at a 2,000-year-old convent, Mother Superior Pelagia Saif proudly shows me one of her favorite pictures, the president and his wife visiting the convent's orphans last year.
The president, we know him, and he loved his people.
It is not a love shared equally among his people.
But at least for now, in his hour of need, it seems Assad can still count on Syria's Christians.
With peace and hope in desperate need, the Pope made his pilgrimage of peace. The lasting effects coming up next. Welcome back. I'm Liz Faublas. This week's news is being dominated by religious strife and Pope Benedict's pilgrimage of peace. The Holy Father's mission is expected to bring lasting effects to the region. Our news director, Ed Wilkinson, talked with Bishop DiMarzio about this for the latest Into the Deep.
Bishop, nice to see you.
Always good to be here.
Last couple of weeks, we've had a lot of news coming out of the Middle East. And of course, some good news, some bad news. The good news, I think, has been the papal trip to Lebanon. 3 days in Lebanon. He seemed to do pretty well. He held up pretty well. He looks pretty good for an 85-year-old.
Well, I think so. It looks good to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was great coverage on the net. I looked at most of it, I think. And I think it was a great success. There was no incidents, although the day after we left there was a demonstration, but that was unconnected to the trip, and it wasn't against the Pope. It was against the cartoon issue there. Mm-hmm. I think, again, he went as a pilgrimage of peace, is what his point was, and he did accomplish that. The cooperation with the various sectors there, between the Muslims, among the various Christian denominations themselves, was excellent. So I think he could claim it as a success. Although there was a lot of apprehension, what could have happened there. I visited Lebanon about 3 years ago, and you could still see the destruction of the civil war is still evident there. Mm-hmm. And even more recently, the assassination of the prime minister, mm-hmm. and it was a road bomb. With a big building went down with it. So they don't play games there. When they want to kill somebody, they know how to do it. Mm-hmm. So it's a testimony to, I think, maybe a new era, that there is peace in Lebanon, at least a fragile peace, but peace nonetheless.
It does seem to be a place where Christians and Muslims get along much better than in other places in the Middle East.
Again, they do get along. There are tensions, but it seems like constitutionally they have divided the offices, and there seems to be at least an accommodation between them.
Did you ever think the trip was in doubt, that he would not go because of all the tensions in the area?
Well, it could have been. I mean, as things got worse, it seemed as the trip got closer, the problem in Syria and the refugees coming over could have been reason to cancel it, but he was intent on doing it. Mm-hmm. 2 reasons. First, he wanted to sign the post-synodal document on the church in the Middle East, and then he wanted to be with the Lebanese people in their onward struggle for survival and for having the accommodation and work between Muslims and Christians. He kind of was able to solidify that.
One of the things he told the young people there was to stay in Lebanon. There seems to be a great exodus of certainly Christians coming out of Syria, coming out of Iraq, but the Pope wants to keep a Catholic Christian presence in the Middle East. What do you think?
Well, that's been the Church's position, that emigration from the region is something we would discourage. On the other side, again, the Pope said we need to help the Christians in the region to remain with opportunities for economic development, for education, all the things that we've been trying to do for almost a century now. It's nothing new. But again, it is difficult when you're in those situations to make a resolve to remain, even though the circumstances are very adverse. Again, we hope that it influences policy among nations to discourage people from leaving their homeland, especially because of discrimination or lack of opportunity. So to be able to make those things happen is very important.
Yeah. What's your assessment of what's going on there in the Middle East, at least in the last 2 weeks? Some people say it's a reaction to this anti-Islamic movie, and there were some cartoons out now, and others say, well, this was just a reaction to 9/11 and they're getting even right
it's hard to tell. I mean, I don't have an opinion. It could be both. 9/11 issue, the excuse. Again, one of the McCain said the other day, nobody goes to a demonstration with rocket-propelled bombs. So, I mean, you know, this is prepared. So it makes some sense that there was more than just a demonstration involved. I think the Libyan government is saying that also, that it was planned and there was Al-Qaeda behind it in that particular case, that we lost an ambassador. It's a very fragile situation. You have extremists that unfortunately give a bad name to the Muslim religion. And we have to understand that it's just a small group that does destroy the peace and the goodwill of a whole religion. But it is unfortunate we live with the consequences.
Yeah, the Vatican, of course, put out a statement decrying the loss of life and the attacks on the embassies, but they also made a point of saying that you know, there's no excuse for this kind of reaction, you know, by a religious community when they're upset, when they feel something, they've been blasphemed.
Yeah.
You should never resort to terrorist attacks.
Of course, it's not the way we see it in the West, and from Christian point of view, this is not the reaction we think is justified. Yet others see it differently.
When you were in Lebanon, did you see some of this cooperation between Muslims and Christians?
Yeah, it's there. It's clear that they coexist and they try to accommodate each other. And again, there are radical extremes that don't believe in this, but for the most part, the people themselves know that they want to get along with one another.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting, you know, I saw a lot of faces on the screen during the trip, like the Patriarch, who we've seen here in Brooklyn. He was here only recently, a couple of months ago. And,
right.
And you met with him, or you met him?
Patriarch Rai, yes, yes. No, again, it's someone I actually know him a long time because he's on the Pontifical Council of Migration with me. And so I have a long relationship with him. A difficult situation, but he's holding up, doing his best.
Good. Okay, Bishop, thanks so much for spending this time with us.
Good to be with you.
And if there's something you want to ask Bishop DiMarzio, we want to hear from you. Send us your question at our new email address, currentsny@desalesmedia.org. Your question may get chosen for a future Into the Deep. Again, that email address is currentsny@desalesmedia.org. Stay with us, more Currents ahead. Did Jesus have a wife? A new claim is stirring passionate debate. We hear from a leader next. Welcome back. A report that had many people talking this week, the claim by a Harvard professor that she had a tiny piece of ancient writing paper, a papyrus, with the words, "Jesus said to them, my wife," written on it. Well, I talked with Bill Donahue, president of the Catholic League, to get his take on this revelation. Bill, we were just having a wonderful conversation ahead of the actual interview talking about this papyrus fragment from the 4th century, which contains a phrase, ever so brief, in which Jesus refers to, quote, "my wife." Now, of course, a Harvard scholar is saying that this is the first evidence supporting the belief among early Christians that Jesus was married. And the operative word there for me is supporting that belief. Ahead of the findings, how prevalent was the belief that Jesus may have had a wife?
Well, you know, it's astonishing that this got to the front page of the New York Times. Of course, she showed it to the New York Times. She showed it to the Boston Globe, which is owned by the New York Times, and to Harvard Magazine, which is the magazine which covers her campus. That was convenient. Listen, we've been down this road before with this idea of the Jesus tomb. It's found out to be a hoax. If you're going to be serious, you have to have some serious evidence, particularly when you're going to challenge the conventional wisdom in any field. So now she says that we don't know anything about where this scrap of papyrus was discovered. We don't know about when it was discovered, where it was discovered. We're not going to release the name of the owner, and we know nothing about the context in which these two words, "my wife," was written, because it's all cut off. So I'm at the point where I'm saying, listen, when you have the answers to these questions, which are preliminary questions, and other kinds of data, then perhaps we will pay attention. But upon doing a little scratching around, I found out that a lot of the people who are the experts in this field are at least dubious, if not just entirely skeptical of what's going on. And I've looked at her previous work. Her own work has been rejected by her German mentor, basically laughed at in the past. She's a divinity professor who questions the divinity of Jesus, which is, by the way, is not uncommon at the Ivy League schools. I did some research on this a few years ago. In fact, I concluded that the average auto mechanic would have a greater chance of believing in Jesus as the Son of God than the people who actually teach.
So, Bill,
at the
you're
Ivy League
saying
Divinity
that,
School.
that her past doesn't even give her enough credibility to make this work. And as you said, and as I was doing my research, the unclear origins of the document, which is what other scholars are saying, should encourage people to be cautious. But for the sake of this quote-unquote finding, let's bite. What would we do to authenticate this particular finding, this papyrus?
Well, I would leave that to the people who are the real experts. I know when I'm out of my league, I have a doctorate in sociology from NYU. This is not my area. But I'll tell you what we would do, and it's already started. We're going to give this over to the experts in her field, who then they can use the kind of standards of conventional empirical evidence that they use appropriate to their field. And I suspect that this will have a short shelf life. What I find astonishing is this. The entire wave in academia, not just at Harvard, is this whole idea of postmodernism, which means there's no such thing as truth. The deconstructionists have taken it even further, saying that no words have any literal meaning. There are people at Harvard who teach this all the time. You can't say, for example, that even though it says explicitly in the Old Testament that homosexual relations, a man lying with a man, that is a sin, there's no end to the people who are reconstructing that and deconstructing that, and they're coming to the conclusion that those words don't really mean what they mean. They do the same thing not only with the Bible, they do it with the Constitution of the United States, they do it with the Declaration of Independence. You can't go by what Jefferson said, etc. Now we have two words, my wife, and she says that those two terms are so clear they can mean nothing else. Well, this is astonishing that we now have this kind of truth serum coming from a Harvard professor, and her whole scholarship is based on this Gnostic interpretation of the gospel. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up.
But, Bill, we do know that once these things come out, and the way social media is today, and the way media is as a whole, it does pique a curiosity, and all the questions start flying. And we also have people revisiting centuries-old debates about now whether Christians should marry and even have sex if it is indeed proven that Jesus had a wife. What can this do to completely deconstruct, if at all possible, what we know about Catholicism?
Well, it won't have any effect at all. The effect is limited to the university and to the carols of the library and the seminars and the workshops that they go to. Quite frankly, the average person in the pew won't even know about this. We care less about it. It'll affect nothing. And the more we know about her and her background or her pedigree of scholarship, the less effect it will have. Look, we know the game. The game is this. If you look at the Internet this morning on Yahoo, they said this raises questions about celibacy. That's the whole point. Lori Goodstein, in her front page New York Times article about the subject, she's only a couple of paragraphs into it, and she starts talking about Catholicism and celibacy and women priests. This is a woman who had written, I'm talking here about the author herself, Karen King, had written books before about how Mary Magdalene is an apostle. And we know where they're going with this. The whole idea is to try and find any historical revisionist idea which would give some credence to opening up the conversation to women priests. And I mean, it's really kind of tired.
And Bill, I probably know what your answer is to this, but I have to ask the question. In cases like this, in your past experience, at what point does the Holy See kind of offer an opinion or even remark upon a finding like this?
Well, they're never too quick off the starting blocks on anything, and on something like this, I think that they should just simply unleash some of the known scholars. So they say there are biblical scholars who are Catholic, who are Jewish, who are Protestant. I'm sure there are other religions, may not know religion. You're going to be hearing about them in waves, if for no other reason. Having spent 20 years in education, 16 as a college professor, I can tell you it's a three-letter word, ego. Nobody from the media ever calls these people who study the ancient text in dealing with the Bible. So now they pick up the newspaper, they find Karen King on the front page of the New York Times. They're wondering, with this thin evidence, no one bothers to consult anything that I've done? Or how come nobody else found anything that would be at all supportive? It just came out of nowhere about this stuff. You haven't heard the end of it, and I think the people in our own field will be the sharpest ones to take this thing apart, never mind the Vatican.
All right, Bill. What can I say? Always such a pleasure to talk to you. You always put such really great perspective on these types of issues. Thank you so much for making time to talk to us today.
Well, thank you, and congratulations to the great work that all of you guys are doing there.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Thank you so much. Stay with us. More Currents next. Harlem Globetrotters star Buckets Blakes teams up to take on the bullies next.
We get a positive feedback from the parents and teachers because it's not about being a tattletale, it's about potentially saving someone from harm.
Finally, we conclude our week in review with a look back at one of the stars of the world-famous Harlem Globetrotters. Anthony Buckets Blakes came to Bishop Ford High School in Windsor Terrace on Tuesday for a little hard-court wizardry and a serious message about a new team, one intended to beat the bullies.
My name is Anthony Blakes, but my teammates call me Buckets because I can score a lot of baskets in a hurry. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona, and this is my 11th season with the world-famous Harlem Globetrotters. We've teamed up with the national campaign to stop violence, and we put the ABCs of bullying together, and that's what I'm going to talk about today, because bullying is a big thing going on in schools this day and age, and we want to help prevent it. I've been bullied before, and I just walk away. I was always that happy, smiling kid at school, so, you know, the bully that we had at our school, he didn't like me very much, because I was always laughing, and that's the thing that bullies want to do. They want to take the power of your happiness away from you. Bullying was something that was cited in over 60,000 essays written by middle school kids. One of the most frequent, causes of violence in those particular kids' lives. Well, the approach that I take with the clapping and the ball handling is just to get the kids involved, keep them, focused. They get the opportunity to do a little ball handling with a Globetrotter, which I think that they think is cool. Toss it up off the head. Yeah. Round the back, under the leg, put it on the ground, shake it to the left, shake it to the right, shake it in, shake it out, lift it up. All right, spread out. We get a positive feedback from the parents and teachers. Sometimes kids are frowned upon when they are so-called tattletales and things of that nature, but these kids realize that it's such a big problem after I finish talking to them that now they open up and they're ready to share some things, because it's not about being a tattletale, it's about potentially saving someone from harm.
The ABCs are action, bravery, and courage. When they're bullied, they're usually really upset or crying and don't really know what to do. They feel like, people don't like them or something. But, I just let them know that it's okay and that, I'm there for them. And if I do see it happening and I happen to be there, I'll stand up for them and tell them that that's not right.
They should definitely tell an adult, or they should seek help from somebody else.
The Globetrotters are just wonderful and very dynamic. They had a wonderful presentation here today. There's so much bullying that goes on in the elementary schools, and it goes on to high school and even into adulthood, unfortunately. To actually have a Globetrotter reinforce the message that they're getting in school and with the parents is so much more significant than anything that the parents can do.
It's very important for me as a Harlem Globetrotter to spread this anti-bullying message. Not only are we the ambassadors of goodwill, but we also feel like we have some sort of influence over the kids, in a positive manner. They love what we do with the basketball on the court, but they get a chance to see us and be a little bit more intimate with us off the court when we come to their schools and talk about the ABCs of bullying.
And we end tonight's program with a memorable performance during the Mass celebrated by Pope Benedict in Beirut, the Panis Angelicus, in honor of the Eucharist, sung by Lebanese soprano Samar Salome. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Liz Faublas. Thank you for watching, and have a good night.